The last thing I remember was running out of the bar. The rain was pouring hard, soaking my clothes, after a big fight with my best friend, Lyla. I was angry and hurt, and all I wanted was to get away. But now, everything is different. I don't know how I got here. I'm standing in a long, dark hallway. There are no lights, no windows, just endless shadows stretching in both directions. The only sound is the soft tapping of rain against glass somewhere far away. It's the only reminder that there's still a world outside this place. At the end of the hall, there's a door. I don't know why, but I feel like I have to go to it. My feet move before I can even think. The door seems to pull me in like a magnet. My fingers brush against the handle, cold and heavy. I push it open. The room inside is dark, except for the pale silver light of a full moon shining through a large window. It casts long, ghostly shadows across the floor. And then I see him. A man is lying on a huge bed, his chest bare, the sheets twisted around his legs. The moonlight touches his face, showing sharp cheekbones, dark eyebrows, and a strong jaw. His lips part slightly as he breathes. He looks beautiful, but not in a nice way, more like a storm or a fire, something powerful and dangerous. And worst of all, I know him. Professor Damian Veylor. The man I hate more than anyone in the world. He's the youngest professor at Marvale University, famous for being smart, strict, and impossible to please. The kind of teacher students whisper about in the halls. Last semester, he failed me, accusing me of cheating on my thesis, the paper I worked on for months, the one I poured my heart into. He destroyed my grade, my confidence, everything. I should leave.
Right now.
But I don't. Instead, I step closer, my heart pounding. Except it isn't. I press a hand to my chest. Nothing. No beat. No pulse. That's when I realize something is very, very wrong. I don't remember coming here. I don't even know where here is. And I can't feel my heartbeat. The air grows colder. The shadows seem to shift, like they're alive. Professor Veylor stirs in his sleep, his fingers twitching. A strange feeling crawls up my spine. This isn't just a dream. This isn't just a mistake. Something has happened to me, and I don't think I can leave. 2 months before I found myself in that strange, moonlit room, I was just a regular student at Marvale University. My best friend Lyla and I were walking through the grand marble hallways, rushing to our next class. Lyla blew a bubble with her gum and popped it loudly. "I'm telling you," she said, "Damian Veylor is not human. He failed half the class last semester and made the rest cry." I rolled my eyes, trying to act brave. "I'm not afraid of him," I said. But my voice shook a little, and Lyla smirked. She knew I was lying. At the time, I had no idea who Professor Veylor really was. I had never met him, but that changed soon enough. It started with my thesis. I had worked for months on that paper, staying up late, rewriting it over and over until it was perfect. It was my best work, but when I got it back, there was a giant red F scrawled across the top. Underneath, in sharp handwriting, it said, "Nice try, Ms. Rowan. My name is Ivy Rowan, not Ms. Rowan, and definitely not a cheater." I was furious. I stormed into his office that same day, ready to yell, to demand an explanation. I expected to find some old, grumpy professor behind the desk. But instead, I saw him. A tall man with dark hair and cold, steel-gray eyes. He didn't even look up when I walked in. The room felt smaller with him in it, like the air was heavier. "You're not Professor Barnes," I said, confused. He finally lifted his gaze. "No," he replied smoothly. "Barnes is gone. I'm Veylor." Then he added, "And you must be the copycat." My face burned. I didn't copy anything. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a bug under a microscope. "Your paper matches another student's work too closely. Word for word in some places." "That's impossible," I snapped. I wrote every sentence myself. He didn't believe me. He just smirked, like my anger amused him. "Confess, and I'll let you rewrite it." "I won't confess to something I didn't do." The rest of that conversation was burned into my memory. His calm, mocking tone. the way he refused to listen, the way he acted like he already knew the truth, his truth, not mine. I left his office shaking with rage. For weeks after that, I replayed the argument in my head. I wished I had said something smarter, something that would have made him believe me. I wished I could erase him from my life completely. But now, standing in that strange, moonlit room, staring at him asleep in bed, I realized something terrifying. I never thought I'd see him again. And yet, here he was. And here I was, with no heartbeat, no memory of how I got here, and no way out. The moment I heard voices outside the room, I panicked. I didn't want anyone to find me here, especially not Professor Veylor. I quickly ducked behind a thick velvet curtain just as the door flew open. A woman rushed inside. She was tall and beautiful, wearing a silky robe, her bright red hair flowing like fire. She looked frantic. "Damian," she called, shaking him awake. "Wake up." Professor Veylor sat up instantly, his sharp eyes alert even though he had just been asleep. "What's wrong, Viv?" Viv's voice was shaky. "It's Lyla. She's turning." Turning, my stomach twisted. What did that mean? Without another word, Damian threw off the covers, pulled on a shirt, and followed Viv out of the room. My heart pounded, or at least, it should have. But I still couldn't feel a heartbeat. I crept out from behind the curtain and slipped into the hallway, moving as quietly as a shadow. I followed their voices downstairs, my bare feet silent on the wooden steps. Then I saw her. Lyla. My best friend was on her knees, crying uncontrollably, her whole body shaking in pain. Her eyes were wide and wild, like an animal caught in a trap. Standing over her was Nate, her boyfriend, a guy I'd never liked. He was scowling, his arms crossed like he was annoyed instead of worried. "It's her friend," Nate muttered. Damian's head snapped up. "Ivy." I froze. He knew my name? Lyla let out another scream, clutching her stomach like something inside her was tearing her apart. Viv spoke again, her voice urgent. "She's turning." The bond was triggered. Ivy must have. I didn't hear the rest. My head was spinning. None of this made sense. What bond? What did they mean by turning? Then Nate said something that made my whole body go cold. "She was hit by a car. After the club." My breath caught. No. That couldn't be true. "I'm right here," I shouted. But no one turned. No one even glanced in my direction. I waved my arms. I yelled as loud as I could. Then, in desperation, I reached out to grab Nate's arm. My hand went right through him. A horrible, sinking feeling filled me. If they couldn't see me, if they couldn't hear me, if I couldn't even touch them, then what was I? And why did Lyla look like she was in so much pain? Something terrible had happened. And somehow, I was at the center of it. A terrible thought crashed over me like a wave. If my hand went right through Nate, if no one could hear me or see me, then what did that make me? A ghost. The word sent a shiver through me. I stumbled back, my shoulder bumping into a vase on a nearby table. But instead of knocking it over, my arm passed straight through it. The vase didn't even wobble. Because I wasn't really here. I wasn't solid. I wasn't alive. I turned and ran. Through the house, past the walls, out into the dark night. The wind should have whipped my hair, but I felt nothing. The ground should have been cold under my bare feet, but it felt like walking on clouds. I screamed as loud as I could, but the sound disappeared into the empty air. Was I dead? But I didn't remember dying. I remembered the rain, the fight with Lyla, the angry walk home, and then nothing. Just darkness, and waking up in that strange hallway. And if I was dead, why couldn't I leave? Why did I keep coming back to Damian's room? As if answering my thoughts, the world around me suddenly melted away. The trees vanished. The night air disappeared. In a blink, I wasn't outside anymore. I was back, standing at the foot of the same bed, in the same moonlit room. Damian was there again, but this time, he wasn't alone. A woman with long dark hair sat on top of him, her arms around his neck, kissing his skin. His hands gripped her waist, but his face looked distracted. Then, as if he sensed something, his gaze lifted. And he looked right at me, not through me, at me. His eyes widened. His breath caught. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, he whispered my name. Ivy. It sounded like he was cursing. It sounded like he was begging. And that was when I knew for sure somehow, impossibly, Damian Veylor could see me. The man who hated me. The man who failed me. The man who might be the only one who knew why I wasn't alive anymore. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm has passed. The moon shone brighter than usual, painting the trees of Marvale Forest in silver light. The air no longer felt heavy with fear. Instead, it hummed softly, like a lullaby. Ivy stood at the edge of the woods, her ghostly form glowing faintly in the darkness. She wasn't like she had been in those first confusing days after her death, no longer flickering in and out, no longer lost. She was steadier now. The sharp pain of being trapped between worlds had faded. She wasn't fighting to be alive anymore. She had accepted what she was. And beside her stood Damian. The man who had once been her professor, the one who had failed her, the one who had seemed so cold and untouchable now looked at her with warmth in his eyes. Not the blazing heat of anger, but the soft, steady glow of understanding. I never told you, he said, his voice low. He reached out, his fingers brushing against her ghostly hand. Even though she wasn't solid, she could almost feel his touch. I saw you before all of this happened. Weeks before the accident. Ivy turned to him, her form pulsing slightly with curiosity. I was in the university archives, he continued. You were there too, researching Lyla's family history. Do you remember? She nodded slowly. I was looking into the legend of the spirit walkers. You found the truth, he whispered. But instead of just learning about it, you ended up living it. A comfortable silence settled between them. There were so many things they could say now, things that had been impossible when Ivy was alive and Damian was just her professor. But some things didn't need words. You shouldn't have been able to come back, Damian said after a while. The boundary between life and death doesn't bend for anyone. I didn't come back, Ivy replied softly. You pulled me. When you said my name that night, it was like you tied me to this world again. To you. Damian looked down, his usual confident expression slipping into something raw and open. I was scared, he admitted. You were never supposed to matter to me. And yet here I am, Ivy said, smiling faintly. Haunting you. And yet I hope you never stop, he murmured. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and lavender. In the distance, the lights of the mansion glowed warmly. Life had moved on. Lyla was getting better. Nate had vanished. Viv had returned to her family. Marvale University remained unchanged, its grand halls hiding the secrets of what had happened beneath its roof. But Ivy and Damian? They existed somewhere in between. A new kind of bond had formed between them, one that not even death could break. Ivy wasn't just a lost spirit anymore. She was his. Not bound by life, but by something deeper. Damian reached for her again, and this time, just this once, his hand didn't pass through hers. Her form shimmered, becoming solid under his touch. Ivy Rowan, he whispered, pulling her close. I'm not ready to leave yet, she said, tilting her head to look at him. Are you? He smiled. Not if you're staying. The trees rustled around them, as if sighing in approval. And then, for the first time since her death, Ivy felt something real. Warmth. A heartbeat. Not hers. His. And for now, that was enough.